Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with HistoryThroughCards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. So, aside from collecting sports cards, I collect a lot of non-sports like Hollywood actors and actresses, and I have always found that to be a great challenge. And really, those cards are not that expensive, but a lot of them are kind of rare or difficult to find. And some of the actors, they have really interesting stories all to themselves. And there was one particular actor that I was looking for one day, and I came across maybe a few of his cards. He doesn't have much, but that ended up being this gentleman right here, Buck Jones. And I did see this card when I was doing a video, but it was so expensive that I passed on it. And I eventually, obviously, if I have it here, I eventually did acquire the card, but at a greatly reduced price. And this is a 1938 Transogram movie Millions. So I want to tell you a little bit about this particular set, the business, the people who made these, and what happened, and some of the actors and actresses as well. Now, I already did a video on Buck Jones about the Coconut Grove fire here in Boston in 1942, and I'll leave a link below if you want to revisit that video. Um, Again, I didn't see a whole lot of cards of him, and I don't think that this is really kind of unusual. And I'm going to go through some of these actors and actresses today. I'll show you the back of it too. I have a few of these actually. It looks something like this. And so the other one I have is this gentleman right here, Guy Lombardo. And I actually do like Guy Lombardo's music. I'm a real big fan of big band music. I always have. I started listening to big band when I was in high school, and I never really told anybody. Just because, get a lot of weird looks. How old are you again? So Guy Lombardo's got a really great song called Croquet, and you guys can listen to it on YouTube. But he's got some other really great stuff too. I didn't actually know that Guy Lombardo did have a card out there. And so what this is it's a game set from 1938, and it's from Transogram, and it's called Movie Millions. And what the object was is that you have 54 cards. 42 are actors, actresses, and directors. And directors, like, who really wants a card of a director, right? But there are a few directors in here that really have some amazing backgrounds. And it's a director is again, it's like a manager of a baseball team, really. You don't see a whole lot of managerial cards out there, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the directors here too. And then you have big band leaders and singers like Bing Crosby. And so what the object is that again you have 54 game cards. 42 of those are actors, actresses, directors, as I just said. And then you have basically seven scenario cards in which the player attempts to put together or piece together a cast uh, from one of seven different genres. Opera, that's a big pass for me. Musicals, again, a big pass. And then you have westerns, romance, not a big romance guy, gotta say. Comedies, dramas, and mysteries. And from that, you have some of the biggest uh, actors and actresses of the day, but it's also missing a couple of really interesting actors as well. Gary Cooper is not in this set. Bob Hope isn't in this set either. You also don't have Jimmy Stewart either, which this is kind of crazy to me. But I think since Jimmy Stewart actually came up in about 1935 or so, this is still pretty fairly early on in his career. So I was kind of hoping that Jimmy Stewart would be in this set. In fact, he doesn't really have a whole lot of cards out there, which surprised me. One actor who does actually have a card in this set, a game card, if you will, is Humphrey Bogart. I do have a Humphrey Bogart card. It's uh it's still in the mail, so I'll do another video on Humphrey Bogart for you guys. He is one of my all-time favorite actors, along with Jimmy Stewart and Ray Milland, who is also in the set. And Ray Milland, he's in two movies that you guys might enjoy, which I certainly do. One is called The Big Clock from 1948, and the other is Dial M for Murder. And I'm not a big fan of that movie. I'm not sure why, because I've seen just about every Alfred Hitchcock movie there is, and this one rates very low for me, to tell you the truth. If you guys have any comments on Ray Milland's movies or Alfred Hitchcock, I would definitely love to hear what you guys have to say. Obviously, The Birds is pretty good. The 39 Steps. There's just so many, but I was not a big fan of Dial M for Murder, and I still am not. I might give it another go. I'm not sure. Ray Milland does have another card in the 1938 Players set, and that's it's a really fantastic set if you haven't seen it. And then you have Fred McMurray as well. And he's in a movie which I just saw for the first time last year called The Apartment from 1960 with Shirley MacLaine, yeah, and Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon has really no cards out there, which surprised me. I'm shocked. I really am. He had a phenomenal career too, and Fred McMurray was in a movie called The Absent-Minded Professor, and then another one from 1944 called Double Indemnity, and I've seen this a couple of times, which is a fantastic movie. And what's interesting about Fred McMurray is that he's in a lot of Disney movies. I'm not a big fan of Disney at all. They've really kind of ruined my childhood. So he was actually the fourth highest paid person in America during the 1940s and I think even the 1950s, which surprised me, even being an actor. But again, he's got a really fantastic resume as well. So getting back to Humphrey Bogart here, he doesn't really have a whole lot of cards during his acting career. He's got a lot afterwards, after his passing in 1956, but he really didn't start acting in earnest in about, I think, 1934. And so by this time in 1938, he was still kind of a bit player, if you will. And he was in The Petrified Forest. I think that's from 1936. And then in another movie from 19, I think it's from 1938 called The Return of Dr. X. This is actually a remake of a 1932 movie called Dr. X with Fay Wray, and Fay Wray is also in this set. And I also wanted to add a card of Fay Wray to my collection, but she is incredibly difficult. I was actually surprised she's got two cards in this set, but she doesn't have a whole lot of other stuff, and that's really surprising to me because she was in the 1933 King Kong movie, which I really enjoyed. I'm not a big fan of the 2005 version of King Kong. I think there are some insect scenes in that movie, which really I found very disturbing. Although the acting was really good and Jack Black is always great. So I liked it up to a point, but there are some very unnecessary scenes in that movie. In any event, maybe it's just me. I don't recall anything like that from 1933, and so Fay Ray doesn't really have anything out there. She had a long life too. I think she was 97 when she passed away, and she was very sharp up until the end, from what I've heard. And so she actually started acting in 1923, and I think she retired in about 1970 or so. But again, she's got like nothing out there, and she does have this particular card. I was going to add it to my collection, but I had to choose either Humphrey Bogart or Fay Ray, and I chose Humphrey Bogart. Bogart, any kind of time that you're going to see one of his cards, they are not that cheap just because of who he is. He is kind of like a national icon, if you will, just a truly American figure. So he kind of spans all sorts of genres, if you will, and not just movies and acting. But again, he doesn't have a whole lot of stuff out there either. And at this point in time, he wasn't as big as he was when he did the Maltese Falcon in 1942. I think they started direct. I think they started directing that in 1941, and it came out in 42. What's really interesting again about this set is that the director for the original version of the Maltese Falcon from 1931 is in this. His name is Roy Del Ruth. I wasn't really aware of the director. I know I've seen the Maltese Falcon um, more times than I care to admit. I love that movie. I love the acting. Obviously, Humphrey Bogart makes that movie, and Peter Lorre definitely. Peter Lorre, I don't think is another actor who has a lot of cards out there. I haven't seen any, and his story is absolutely fascinating. I wish he did have a card out there. If he does, you'll probably see a video just on him. I have another video on Humphrey Bogart at some point down the road because again I really love his stuff. In any event, Roy Del Ruth directed the 1931 version of the Maltese Falcon, which I also enjoy that. Um, it's kind of a different movie, I think, than the 1941. And the actors in it are actually quite good, I think. Richard Cortez is the lead, and the other lead is BB Daniels, and I think she is in the 1928 Will's Tobacco set, the actors set, which kind of remind me of the T207, but it's again it's a great set. It's not all that expensive either if you're looking for a nice actors and actresses set. And Richard Cortez or Ricardo Cortez is also in that, and he actually became very wealthy through the stock market. He was a runner, I believe, on Wall Street, and I think that he left Hollywood to go into business. So he was actually really good in the 1931 version, and Dashiell Hammett actually did the book in 1930, and then 1931 is when the original movie comes out, and it's again it's a different kind of a different movie. I think Peter Lorre is also in that movie. I can't remember though; it's been a while. It's a really interesting movie. If you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I'm not very good with kind of like telling people about movies because I watch a lot of really bad movies or at least everybody says that I watch a lot of bad movies that I think are really great. So, my perception of movies or what is good is a different perception than everybody else has. What can I say? It's just that's again why I always um, tell you guys if if you want to learn more about this stuff, do it. Don't rely on what I have to say because my judgment on good movies are not that good. So anyway, Roy Del Ruth, he's at this time he's the second most highest paid director in Hollywood, and he doesn't have really any cards out there. So Roy Del Ruth also did a movie called The Babe Ruth Story in 1948. This movie was really rushed because they wanted to get it out before Babe Ruth died, and he died in the same year. And so Del Ruth really wasn't very happy with this movie. I saw this when I was a kid, and it stars William Bendix, and he's actually a pretty good actor. I think he was in the Blue Dahlia, and so I have seen bits and pieces of that particular movie, and from the Blue Dahlia came the Black Dahlia, and that's the murder case from 1947. And in the event, um, he really didn't like this movie. When I saw it, I was not a big fan of it either, and I think maybe they could have changed it. Now, in another movie with another director in this particular set is Sam Wood. Sam Wood did The Pride of the Yankees from 1942, and that stars Gary Cooper as Lou Gehrig. There are several letters between Samuel Goldwyn and Christy Walsh and Eleanor Gehrig on how this movie should go forward, and I think Eleanor Gehrig's her concern really was to portray Lou Gehrig in the best possible light, and that created some conflict, I think, with the movie studio, and there was a little bit of consternation there between all three of these people. And I can understand really where Eleanor Gehrig was coming from, but at the same time, Gary Cooper could not play baseball at all. I don't think he understood the sport. Just watching him throw a baseball or bat was kind of painful. But again, he's a really good actor. It's just that I I don't who else would you have in that role other than Gary Cooper? And some roles are kind of meant for certain actors, and you can't really see them in any other. You can't see another actor playing that particular role because the actor, him or herself, does a really fantastic job. But in this case, I'm just wondering out loud here who you would have to replace Cooper. Again, he's in Sergeant York. He's not in this set as far as I can see, which is really strange because he's one of the biggest stars of the 1930s and 40s and even in the 1950s, and he also is a huge Western star as well, which some people might not know about. I'm not a big fan of westerns, that's for sure. I think the last time I saw a western was 310 to Yuma, the remake. And so I'm not a really big fan of westerns, but this set also includes Bing Crosby as well, and I'm surprised that Bob Hope isn't in this set because at this time in 1938, Bob Hope was huge. He does have a lot of cards actually, so you're just because he's not in the set, you're still gonna be able to find a Bob Hope card if you want. Um, it's just kind of surprising to me, but maybe it's just because they didn't have a whole lot of people to choose from. In fact, what's funny is that there's a lot of actors and actresses in this set that I've never actually heard of. And so it may be like a one-off thing where that's their only addition to a set. I just don't know. I'm always trying to find new cards of actors and actresses that I may think don't have any cards out there. But Bing Crosby, he started in about 1923. as a singer, and by 1936 to his passing in 1977, he was probably one of the greatest recording artists of his era, of his generation. He was always in the top 10 in recording sales between 1926 and 1977, and he made a very successful crossover from singing to film, and I think he's one of the very first. In 1946, he actually starred in three of the year's best pictures, and he won an Academy Award for Best Actor in 1944's Going My Way. And in baseball related news with Bing Crosby, he's actually the minor owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates from 1946 to his passing in 1977. And from what I've heard, that he didn't want to see the 1960 World Series Game 7 because he was so nervous that he had them basically record the entire game, and that recording wasn't found until 2009 in its entirety. I have yet to see the 1960 World Series. I tried my best to see all the World Series and all of the clips from the 1920s, 30s, and 1910s, and just to kind of familiarize myself with how some of these ball players actually played the game, and any kind of like information I might glean from that. So I have yet to see the 1960 World Series. Ben Crosby is also in the Golf Hall of Fame as well, and I thought this is really kind of funny. Um, there's some really interesting people in the Golf Hall of Fame. President Eisenhower is a Golf Hall of Famer, and I think Dinah Washington or Dinah Shore, one of those two, one of those two Dinahs are in the Golf Hall of Fame. Ben Crosby made it in 1978, and his brother Bob Crosby, he was an orchestra leader, Bob Crosby and the Bobcats, and he's actually got a really good song from 1938 called "Summertime," which I thought was the theme song to The Streets of San Francisco, but I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I actually watched that TV show, and you guys can definitely tell me in the comment section below. That song is really familiar to me, probably too familiar actually. Again, I really love big band. There's actually another major big band leader in this set, Benny Goodman, and he actually does have several cards out there later on in the 1950s, and he had a pretty lengthy career. At this time, though, he had a huge hit uh, called "Sing Sing Sing." The original, I believe, was from 1936. Louis Prima originally did this song. I don't really like that version, and the McGuire sisters also did this song too. Both of those versions are their vocals, which I'm not a big fan of. The Benny Goodman version is probably the best, and at some point, I'm probably going to be wearing hearing aids because of this, and Van Halen as well. I tend to blast big band music and Van Halen, so my hearing is going to go first, but I'll have fun doing it. So, um, anyway, Benny Goodman actually, I think he passed away in 1986, but he was playing all the way up to that point, and he also did a song called "The King Porter Stomp," and that's actually my intro to my video. That was originally a Jelly Roll Morton song from 1923. I really wanted to add George Gershwin's 1924 Rhapsody in Blue as my intro to my videos. It's been in the public domain since 2020. However, a lot of the copies of that song are actually still under copyright, so I couldn't do it. I love that song, and you guys, you really should listen to it on YouTube. It's fantastic. In any event, there's another actor I want to introduce you to, and that is George Raft. And George Raft is known for a few things. One being that he turned down a lot of roles that eventually went to Humphrey Bogart, which made Humphrey Bogart a major star. And two of those roles were The Maltese Falcon and Double Indemnity from, try this one again, Double Indemnity from 1944 with Fred McMurray. I'm wondering how well they would have done or held up if George Raft had actually accepted these roles for the lead character in either movie. I'm not entirely sure. Again, it's only speculation. What also is speculation too surrounding George Rift Raft, and there's a reason why they called him Rift Raft, is because he was known to be or thought to have been a associate of mobsters back in the 1930s and 40s. This is kind of interesting because he was questioned quite often by the FBI, uh, specifically once in 1938. And I looked a little bit more into that particular case. I haven't read any of the FBI files on George Raft yet. I kind of plan on doing that. And it's kind of interesting what you'll find in FBI files from the 1930s and 40s. There's a case from the 1930s. It's Louis Balkalter case, and he's actually I think he's a founding member of Murder Inc. He's kind of interesting because there's a theory that Louis Balkalter knew something about the disappearance of Judge Crater in 1930, along with a police officer named Charles Burns, and they had supposedly killed Crater. And if you haven't heard anything about this Judge Crater case, it recently made headline news again in 2005. And then afterwards, they've never found Judge Crater, but they think that these two guys knew about it. And Louis Buckalter actually went to Sing Sing in 1944. He got a taste of Old Sparky, if you will. Uh, that's the reason why they questioned George Raft, is because Louis Buckalter was on the run in 1938, and he eventually turned himself in 1939. I'm also not entirely sure too if Leo DeRocher was suspended because of his ties to Lorraine Day, who is still married to Ronald Reagan, or the fact that he was a roommate of George Raft, and Happy Chandler thought that because George Raft was a gambler and Leo DeRocher was a kind of a pool shark and a gambler himself, that either case didn't look good for baseball. And so Leo DeRocher was suspended from the 1947 season because of either his association with George Raft, which very well could be, or his association with Lorraine Day. And so, unfortunately, Branch Rickey did have to suspend him for the year. And this was, uh, I think, before opening day of 1947. He did, in fact, have a still a impact on the 1947 season. And so, Leo DeRocher is somebody who I think transcends baseball at this point, and is another cultural icon, if you will. And I'll be doing a video on Leo DeRocher at some point, and probably an article too. I do collect a lot of Leo DeRocher stuff, and again, he was really great with autographs, and you can still find a lot of them. Director Wild Bill Wellman is also in this set, and he did a movie called The Public Enemy with Jimmy Cagney in 1931, along with Joan Blondell, who's also in this set. William Wellman has a really interesting career and a very interesting background. He was with the Lafayette Escadrille during World War One, and he also did the movie Wings. from 1927. And if you guys haven't seen that movie, it is fantastic. It also shows Gary Cooper in one of his first appearances on film, and Clara Bow is also in it, along with Richard Arlen and Buddy Rogers. And it's really kind of a groundbreaking and innovative movie. So again, if you guys haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. It's really fantastic. Clara Bow, she doesn't have too many cards out there. I think she's in the 1928 Wills Cinema Stars set, if you're looking for one of her cards. And then Richard Arlen does have cards out there, so he's not difficult at all. Also, I forgot to mention too, Sam Wood. Aside from being the director from Pride of the Yankees, he was also the director of several Marx Brothers movies, and they were A Night at the Opera and A Day at the Races. And I'm not really the biggest fan of the Marx Brothers. I'm a huge fan of the Three Stooges. I could really leave or take the Marx Brothers, tell you the truth. But if you guys have any favorite Marx Brothers movies, let me know. Try to change my mind on the Marx Brothers. The company itself was founded in 1915 in New York City as the Friction Transfer Patent Company. It's a horrible name for a company. So, Charles Sanford Raisin was brought on board, and he actually bought the company 2 years later, in 1917, and changed it to Transogram. And it was one of the top gaming companies in the country, and it transferred over, if you will, from being a board game company to a toy company, I think in the late 1950s and definitely by the early 1960s. It had a line of baseball player figurines in 1968, in fact. And these figurines on the back of the packages, you would find a card that you could cut out, or a three-panel card as well. The cards themselves are yellow, and they're, I think, based on Topps photography. Now, I'm not entirely sure if Topps lent the company their photographs or how that worked out, but there are a lot of photos associated with Transogram that are also found on the 1967 or 68 Topps set, and some of them are actually more unique to Transogram. I think those are pretty cool cards. I don't have any in my collection. I'd actually love to have a card. They're blank backed as well. The company tried to last as long as it could, and fortunately, what happened in January of 1969, Gabriel Industries Inc. acquired the company for $1 million, and it couldn't make a go of it. At this point in time, Charles Sanford had passed away in 1967. His son Roy succeeded him, and his son actually had I think a 50-year career with the company as well. In November of 1970, November 19th, in fact, the company filed for bankruptcy, and it couldn't make a go out of it, and it was gone by 1971. So that's my look into the 1938 Transogram set. It's a really interesting set. It's a really neat board game. We actually do have a few other board games that are associated with sports. And the 1974 Parker Brothers football game has photographs or cards that Topps issued with the set, and some of the players in that set are their photographs are unique to that particular set, And then there's also the 1968 Milton Bradley set as well, which has cars in it, and it has football players. It's actually from 1968, but the football players are basically 1967 tops, and then the baseball players are the 1968 tops, and then they are kind of a little bit different. The backs are a little bit different as well. So those two sets are really becoming very popular. The 1974 Parker Brothers and then the Milton Bradley sets. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate this as always. Like and subscribe if you will. You have any comments on the actors or the cards or any of the sets I just mentioned? Let me know. I'm always interested in hearing what you guys have to say. So until the next time, I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.